To abilities and beyond. A look at the past, present, and future of 3.0. So I took some time before I wanted to make this video because I was heated at a couple things. Some things I don't think are too good. There is some silver lining to a lot of this. I'm not going to read it word for word, but what I am going to do is talk about in depth some of the things that are happening. And essentially, they want to talk about general ability updates, quality of life changes, going on in Lightfall and beyond. So the road traveled and path ahead, and they start talking about 3.0 and how that's changed the game. Aspects, fragments, pairing in exotic armor mods. Essentially, it creating a very, and I quote, powerful ability, high uptime. And probably true. We remember, Arc Titan Grenade resulted in some PvE activities, losing the tension that made them special, introduced additional noise into the Crucible, which I think that we would all agree with that. And there's a couple key words that they use throughout this blog post. One of them is build crafting. And I, for one, do enjoy build crafting, but with some of the things going on, they can't be used in the same sentence. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean. And they also bring up the 30th anniversary a lot. Now, if you're a PvP player, that should excite you because that 30th anniversary patch was some of the best that we've had in a while as far as overall balance of the Crucible landscape. And by the way, again, this is just me. I'm going to show some clips in the background and a couple points, but it's more of like a CoolGuy podcast type deal. Just listen along here. And they say the goal of the ability uptime for PvE and the Crucible is to get back roughly to the 30th anniversary pack. So for Lightfall, we're making the following change. Passive cooldown gains. Rescale the efficacy of discipline strength, each class ability stat on grenade, melee, class ability, the regeneration rate. So in general, the regeneration provided by a tier 10 stat is now roughly equivalent to a tier 8 in the previous system. Each stat tier now provides a more consistent gain in cooldown reduction rather than spiking heavily at lower tiers. But it also spiked heavily at the higher end tiers. So I'm going to bring up my chart. And I made this variable ability cooldown chart for everything from the supers to, things have changed a little bit and then reverting back. We'll get to that. But, essentially tier 10 for, let's say, a skip grenade or an arc bolt was at 40 seconds, gonna be at 52. A lot of these abilities, glacier grenade, proximity knife, a lot of these are going back to around a minute. Should that be scary? A little bit. All it really means is that you're going to have to build even more into it for that cooldown. Like, yeah, the glacier grenade's a long time, but you do have aspects and fragments to get that faster. You have kickstarts. You have some avenues. But some of these things, like we'll go with the snare bomb, added 10 seconds. And again, that's at tier 10. So tier 9 might be 50, 8, 55. Tier 3 might go all the way back to around a minute 34, a minute 43. But with this chart, they say, the scaling from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 to tier 4 is supposed to scale better. But also in the system, they highly encourage you to go from 9 to 10, right? If you're at 8, you needed to go to 10. Because the break-off limit really was tier 7 for our abilities. Like, we have a 4-second shaved cooldown on the Swarm Grenade from tier 8 to tier 9, but a 6-second from 9 to 10. All of them are like that. So, main thing to take away, the abilities are going to take a little bit to get. On top of that, if you want to really heavily build into them, we have the kit available to do that, again, with kickstarts, bolstering, tons of exotics, different ways. There's frosties, right? There's a ton of different ways to get that faster, and we'll explore that more in the future. Starting in Lightfall, you'll be able to run the following ability energy regenerating mods at the same time, more freely, and able to socket multiple copies. So again, the bomber, the kickstarts, hands-on, dynamo. It's going to be a big part of build crafting. They say that the cost of these mods have been heavily reduced. And again, artifact mods no longer need to be slotted. They believe that the cooldown for the new scaling system is going to be fine. So the marksman dodge reduced from 34 to 29, gamblers 46 to 38. So we're going back and forth with certain things. They talk about when in Rome as far as roaming supers. Essentially, roaming supers, orbs of power that can be generated, goes from 5 to 7. And one-off supers like panic supers, your Nova bombs, your blade barrage, orbs of power reduced from 7 to 5. Well, Dawn, Shadow Shot, going to be unchanged. We have a buff 2 Hammer of Soul, Daybreak, and Spectral Blades, going from a tier 1 to a tier 2 super, which is a good thing. We have War to Dawn nerfs. Maximum health reduced from 13,500 to 8,000. Kinetic and energy weapons deal the same damage now, 1.5 to the War to Dawn. Before, energy weapons did more. Now, Armor Light has been adjusted to reduce its potency in PvP, so the maximum health reduced from 425 to 300. That's a big change. It's a big change because 1-2 punch shotguns, somewhere along the way, lost that one trick. You should be able to go into a Ward of Dawn and 1-2 punch them out of it. You couldn't do that before, so that should be coming back. Now inherits Void Overshields 50% PvE damage resistance and no longer negates precision damage. So not only that, you can go in there with a slug shotgun and hit him in the head. Thunder Crash, essentially very difficult to counter. And it's kind of odd how they went with the balance here. Like, I get it. The flight time reduced by a half second. Descent now begins earlier. Reduced landing detonation size by around 20%. When it came out, everyone was like, the tier that it's in as far as how fast you can get it is pretty wild for how potent the super is. So I thought that maybe they might bump it down a little bit or extend the time of Thunder Crash because it's a great super. It's going to continue to be. And they just went this route instead of making the super time different. So we'll see how that checks out. Spark of Resistance, they're changing it to where it requires 3 enemies to be around, so like a threat detector, a surrounded instead of 2, and they reduce the linger time, you're no longer surrounded, by 2 seconds, so from 4 to 2. They buffed Daybreak. Super energy cost reduced from 10% to 6.5% per swing, increased the PvE damage by 25%, so that's a good thing for Dawnblade. It hasn't been used, I don't know if you've used it in a while, but once you start throwing out those Dawnblade swords, the super's gone before you know it. So basically you should get 2 to 3 extra swings, which is a good thing. And then they talk about Phoenix Dive, and that's been a meme for a while between me and Fallout. But this is pretty good because it was hard to justify picking it over healing and Powering Rift. So the base cooldown reduced from 88 to 55 seconds. That's just the base cooldown. Tier 10 should get around, 30, 35 seconds or so. But while Heat Rises is active, the restoration duration increased from 1 to 3 seconds. While Daybreak is active, you can just hit it over and over. The cooldown is significantly reduced, so that way you can get up in the sky, get down, get up in the sky, get down. And the detonation maximum damage increased from 80 to 220. So not only can you get up and get down, you can one-shot with the Phoenix Dive. So it pairs great with the kit of Dawnblade. Those two things together made that a lot better. Then we start talking about collision damage. It's no longer going to be lethal to Guardians. You're going to get yeeted, but it's going to leave you with 1 HP. You might go down shortly after that, but at least you're not all the way out. And honestly, there might be a couple ways to maybe sword swipe or whatever your teammates, yeet them across the map to like a checkpoint. So we'll just see how all that goes. Okay, so we get into the new tools in the arsenal, and there are some things here that I do not like. So build crafting enhancements, and I'm going to just bring that up again. Build crafting enhancements. Adding some fragments to light subclasses, handful of Solar Void Arc. We have some new terms, we have breaches, fire sprites, and these things are going to be spiritual successors to combat style mods that aren't making the jump to the new build crafting system. So for Arc, we have Instinct. While critically wounded, taking damage from nearby enemies emits a burst of damaging arc energy that jolts targets. So like, why not run that with Feedback Fence? We have Spark of Haste. You have greatly increased resilience, recovery, and mobility while sprinting. No shocker there, Arc is the speed class. There's some things to work with Frosties and other exotics. I'm okay with these. We get into Solar, these fire sprites. So created by a suite of new and existing solar fragments, grant grenade energy on pickup. So we have Mercy. When you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration. And picking up a fire sprite grants restoration. So I'm gonna stop right here. And all of this is directed towards the Crucible, every single bit of this feedback. But, we talk about build crafting, right? Build crafting breakthroughs. This is not a build crafting breakthrough, okay? This is doing something you're supposed to do, right? And you get a great benefit. And we've talked about that in the Crucible for a while, whether it be Wormhusk, getting health, great benefit for doing something basic such as your class ability. As far as Bastion Shield, throwing down an Overshield, getting a huge advantage for something basic that you should be doing anyway. So let's, with your mind's eye for a second here, say we're playing Capture Trials. They bring back the Anomaly for whatever reason, right? We're back on the Anomaly. We're playing Trials of Osiris. We get to B flag. I have my buddy throw down a Bastion Shield that gives everyone an Overshield. I noob tube the ground a couple times as a Hammer Titan, but I'm also wearing the Precious Scars. Once they see me go down, they're gonna rush. Well, when I get revived, here's how that works. Maybe I have a Dawnblade friend with me. So at that point in time, with Precious Scars, the Titan, myself, has 350 total hit points. That is my health, Precious Scars Overshield, and the Revive Overshield. And oh yeah, now we're adding Restoration on top of that. My 2 teammates also have Restoration with an Overshield from my Precious Scars, and we have a couple of us with Healing Grenades. So how do you think that that's gonna go? And what did we build craft to do that? We put on a fragment and an exotic helmet. That's just one small example. And once Lightfall comes out, if the other things I'm thinking of are true, I'm definitely going to show them. We have Resolve. Solar Grenade Final Blows cure you. A certain Warlock exotic got even better. Tempering now creates a fire sprite on solar weapon kills while active, in addition to the original effect. So remember, picking up a fire sprite grants restoration. Combustion now creates a fire sprite or solar super defeats on solar super defeats. Searing creates a fire sprite when defeating scorched targets. We'll see how that plays. Then we have Void. We have Breach. Void breaches are created by a selection of new and existing void fragments. Grant class ability energy on pickup. Cessation. Finish your final blows create a burst of void damage that causes nearby enemies to become volatile. Defeating the volatile targets creates a void breach. So, two things come to mind. Number one, your Falcon. You pair that with some other aspects. Use your finisher, become invisible with a certain fragment. You're now creating a burst of void damage, making things volatile. Maybe you have Repulsor Brace to get an Overshield after that. Maybe you're running the aspect where you go invisible after you defeat a volatile target. And once you defeat them, you get more class ability energy from that breach. Another one comes to mind is one that isn't used, but I think will be used because of this fragment, is the Fellwinter's Helm. If you could do the same thing, do a finisher, maybe get special ammo or heavy ammo using another mod, debuff the area, making them volatile, running away because you're invisible, that's a good play. We'll see how that goes. Vigilance. Defeating a target when your shields are depleted grants a temporary void overshield. Okay, let's go back. What was said here? Hold on. Build crafting enhancements. I want to point out again that for me to build into the Osmiomancy gloves, I need 100 discipline, so I build into that with all my mods. I need kickstarts, I need bolstering, I need the fragments to match to make sure my Osmios do well. When I run the Ahamkara Spine, when I run the Caliban's Hand. All of these things do require build crafting to enhance my exotic, my build. Doing something you should be doing in the first place, winning a gunfight, then granting an overshield is not build crafting. I have no idea why this is here. We talked about One-Eyed Mask when it came out. It was a problem. We've talked about Bastion Shields for the past year. It's a problem. So now we're saying that if you win your gunfight, you get an overshield for doing absolutely nothing else. I do not get that. And with restoration and healing, and we'll talk about a lot of that once we get into Lightfall, you know, the game is straying further and further away from tactical gun skill play to who can create the most cheesiest thing. Like, dude, I could throw a Bastion Shield down with One-Eyed Mask, have the advantage in my gunfight, outduel them, get a chunky overshield from Echo Vigilance, and then the rest of it is by One-Eyed Mask. That's gonna win me the next gunfight. And what did I do to build into that? 100 resilience because I'm a Titan. Path of least resistance. So like, again, that's not build crafting, that's not enhancing a build. It is not. And there is no world from 1,000-foot view. I would think that this is a good thing. And again, PvP specifically, because for the past forever, always, asterisk, always an issue. Anything that gives very little commitment to your health, overshield or restoration is a problem. Lorelei got nerfed. OEM got nerfed. Wormhusk got nerfed. The Stag got nerfed. Anything that requires literally like nothing, just doing what you're supposed to do that gives a huge gain gets nerfed. So why this is here, do not know. And all that tells me, again, is just to build the cheesiest things possible. 1 and 2, extremely high damage weapons. Like the Messenger in no time never looked better. Doing 36 per crit, over 100 per burst with kill clip. Like that's what you're gonna need. Over under isn't gonna help you. Nothing like that is going to help you. You need extremely high damage that puts it down fast. Moving on. Domineering creates a void breach when you defeat suppressed targets. Harvest creates a void breach when defeating weakened targets with precision damage. Starvation grants Devour, picking up a void breach. And again, the void breach picking it up is class ability energy. So the silver lining to all of this, like I don't like what I see on paper, right? But you also need to understand we have extremely different gunplay coming. Everything's going to be different. We don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know how these new ability cooldowns are going to feel. We don't know the new exotics. We don't know the new changes that are being made, the new weapons, whatever they are. It's a mystery. So like in a vacuum, it's not even really worth talking about. But I do know that on paper, there's some things that I do not like. Like it's a 1 step forward, 2 steps back type of deal. I think that the overall ability change is going to be good because, again, there are things that you can build into. Some things are built in, like the Caliban knife. If it doesn't go off, you get a faster regen, you get a faster cooldown, you have kickstarts, whether it be by exotic or by building into it with other things. And again, there's going to be other things probably that we don't even know about. So that's why I'm not too worried, but that doesn't mean I can't like it. I'd like to know what you think though. I mean, again, there are like 6 or 7, 8 other things I have written down that I'm going to try in Lightfall. And if it's as bad as I think it is, I'll let you know. But, you know, you saw like the fight the Lorelei Titan with the restoration. Like, what are we doing here exactly? Like, my choice is to disengage or throw up a barricade myself and have this weird pulse duel where everyone's having overshields. And like, what are we doing? And things like that aren't just like a rare occurrence. It is every game. Lots of games are going to time. Lots of people are using second chance things because they're there and easily abused. So when you throw in things like you get an overshield by defeating your target, like, yeah, I have an issue with that. As with everything, I'm going to build craft. I'm going to play it. I'm going to play what's there. And 90 out of 100 times, I do end up having fun with it. But it's concerning that the pain points that we've had for a long time keep coming back and coming back so repeatedly that there's just no end in sight. I don't know, like I said, I took some time, I thought about it, gathered my thoughts about it. I thought that was the best way to approach this because, like I said, I was really heated, and you probably saw or heard some of that today, but Strand actually just might be the equalizer to all this. We don't know. I do hope that they watch a couple of these things very closely, and if or when, let's say a combination or it just becomes an issue, that they act. Like, I really hope that they act. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, mostly I think it's a good thing. Like, going back to the 30th, I think is a good thing. There's a lot of good, but there is some bad. Tell me what you think. Thank you for watching. Well, in this case, listening. And until the next one, I am CoolGuy.